Hello, my young readers, and welcome back to the channel. And if you're new, welcome. We've got another great story for you, and I'm hoping you're ready for it. So sit back, relax, get your popcorn, get your drink, make sure you've already gone to the restroom, and stay tuned. The name of this story is called Calling All Engines. This is part of the Thomas and Friends series. Enjoy. Summer is a busy time on the island of Sodar. The engines love to show travelers around the island. They visit the seaside, the windmill, and the new Sodar suspension bridge. One morning, Sir Topham Hatt came to the shed. He had a very important announcement to make. A new airport is to be built on Sodar, and I need you all to help. The engines were very excited. Thomas and Percy were coupled to freight cars full of bricks and timber to take to the airport building site. Imagine all the travelers, chuffed Thomas, and all the airplanes, puffed Percy. Then Alray and Bert arrived. Stinky Steamy's in the way again, mumbled Alray. Why do we have to work near them, grumbled Bert. This made Thomas and Percy cross. They didn't want to work near the diesels either. The diesels were oily, and they seemed very different to the Steamies. Thomas, Percy, Alray, and Bert worked at the airport all afternoon. They shunted freight cars full of bricks and tar. The diesels bumped Thomas and biffed Percy. Dirty diesels, moaned Percy. I don't like them. Thomas and Percy had been so excited about working at the airport, but Alray and Bert were there now, and it wasn't any fun. That night, a hurricane swept through the island. It was the strongest wind the engines had ever known. All night long, the wind howled down the tracks. It tore down the trees and ripped off roots. The next morning, Thomas gasped at what he saw. Bust my buffers, he cried. Look at what the wind has done. The seaside had been battered. The windmill was wrecked, and the Sodar suspension bridge had collapsed. Thomas felt terrible. Sir Topham Hatt came to see the engines. The hurricane has done lots of damage, he said sadly. Everyone will have to work even harder if we want to open the airport. Edward and Henry brought bricks to the airport building site, while Diesel arrived with a load of timber. But the diesels weren't talking to the steam engines, and the steam engines weren't talking to the diesels. Everyone was cross. That afternoon, Thomas had to collect some paint for the bridge. He puffed into the builder's yard to pick up the pots of paint. But Diesel was in the yard too. Now, I'll show Thomas who's best, Diesel whispered, and he gave the freight cars an extra hard shunt. Paint pots flew into the air and splattered down all over Thomas. Thomas looked very silly indeed. Spotty boiler, laughed Diesel, and he rolled away. I'll show those diesels, Thomas huffed. So the next time Thomas saw Alray, he gave him a biff. And when Alray saw James, he gave him a bash. Soon, the diesels and the steamies were biffing and banging and being bashed all over the island. The engines were in a terrible mess, and no work had been done. That evening, Sir Topham Hatt came to see the engines. He was very angry. You have caused confusion and delay. The seaside is still a mess. The bridge isn't painted, and we will not be able to open the airport. No travelers will come to Sodar this year. No travelers, moaned Thomas. And no airplanes? Groaned Percy. All the engines knew they had behaved badly, and they were very sad. That night, Thomas had a dream. He was puffing along a misty mountain track, and there was Lady. Lady was a very special steam engine. She worked high up in the mountains. Lady was shunting trucks with Rusty, the diesel engine. Thomas was surprised. We always finish our jobs when we work together, puffed Lady. The next morning, when Thomas woke up, he had an idea. First, he went straight to see Mavis. Mavis was a kind diesel engine, and Thomas knew she would listen. He told Mavis that he wanted the steam engines and the diesels to work together. Mavis agreed. It was the only way to get the airport open in time. Let's have a big meeting with all the engines at the coaling stop tomorrow, Thomas puffed. Thomas and Mavis went to see the other engines to tell them about the meeting. Thomas told Percy, then James, then Emily. Mavis told Diesel, then Ari, then Bert. The next day, the engines gathered at the coaling stop. The steam engines and the diesels were all lined up. Thomas blew his whistle. Steamies and diesels need to work together, chuffed Thomas. If the airport doesn't open, it will be bad for all the engines. Both the steam engines and diesel engines need passengers and freight to be useful. If we work together, we can get the job done, puffed Thomas. All the engines agreed. After that, the engines worked harder than ever. They hauled bricks and timber and cleared away debris from the storm. They moved paint and tar and made sure there was enough workers to do each important job. And all the engines were careful not to bump or block each other. Even Diesel 10, the biggest diesel engine of all, agreed to help out. Soon, the engines were even enjoying working together, smiling and joking as friends would do. Before long, the airport was finished. It had shining buildings and a big, tall control tower. The runway was long and smooth. The engines were very proud and very excited. I can't wait for the travelers, puffed Thomas. And look, peeped Thomas, here comes the first plane. Well, my young readers, that ends our story. You know, in this story, we got a chance to see what the island of Sodor actually looks like.
Yeah, I do too. I thought it was really beautiful. And the thing that really impressed me was that Sodar suspension bridge. I wonder what that would feel like riding across it.
I bet it would be nice. I would not mind that at all. It puts me in the mind of like a roller coaster ride or some type of ride that you would do at a fair or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And did you notice that Sir Topham Hatt came and introduced to them the idea of adding an airport?
Right, right,
Of course,
right.
that means, all the engines would have to work together.
Yeah, good luck with that. You know, with the other story that we read, and they had a big problem between the diesel engines and the steam engines. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm. And the story, in case any of you guys out there want to know, the story that Little Darling is talking about is Danger at the Diesel Works. And that really showcases the difference between the steam engines and the diesel engines and, all of the likes and dislikes they have with each other. So you might want to check it out.
And that story is right here on the channel that, yours truly reads. And Triangel, thank you for that little plug that you did, that shameless little plug.
Well, I do what I can.
Well, I do appreciate it, Triangel. But like Triangel was saying, the story Danger at the Diesel Works, this story touches a little bit of it, not as deeply as Danger at the Diesel Works, which is on this channel. But on this story, or in this story, it gets dealt with, and I think it gets dealt with really well.
And to help deal with it is, of course, your favorite,
Sir
Topham Hatt. He kind of comes in and kind of reprimands them like they were his children or something.
Well, they kind of act like his children, so he has to treat them the way they act.
And I totally get it. What do you think about the weird dream that Thomas has about the engine or the steam engine lady?
Weird. Because after he had the dream, he has this idea about the engines working together, and then if he can actually get a diesel, which he did, Mavis, to kind of come in on the idea with him to talk the other engines or the other diesels into coming in with him and the steamies into working together to get that airport.
Right.
That was it was taken from that dream.
Yeah, it was dream inspired. But that was it was unique that it actually got all the engines to work together nicely. So it actually ended up being what I've heard you say on many other stories, Little Darling, that this was, an all's well that ends well situation.
I definitely would agree with you. I was thinking that exact same thing.
Well, you know what they say. Great minds, they do think alike. Well, Little Darling, we've come upon that time where I have got to bid all of you all a fond farewell, and I will see you all in the next episode. Bye!
Well, there goes Miss Triangel. Well, guys, I hope you had a good time, because we did. And until next time, my young readers, I am your little darling narrator, out.